which is the district's designated method of giving notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance to the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it into us now so that you may be recognized during the public forum part of our meeting. And these forms are also located by the entry doors of this room. Mrs. Simmons, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Hinkle,
Present.
Dr. Brose, Mr. Brown, Ms. Wolf, Mr. Barsonis, Mrs. Inc., Mrs. Albers, and Mrs. Gordemaker.
All right, thank you. Agenda item 3 is our mission statement. Mr. Barsonis, will you please read that for us?
Every student, every day a success, in educating students we teach hearts as well as minds. Within the school district of Grand Island, every student will be taught to read, write, and communicate effectively, solve problems, acquire and apply knowledge, and demonstrate mastery through performance to the best of the student's abilities. Every student will be treated with fairness and dignity. Every student will be honored for their unique qualities and backgrounds. Every student will experience a sense of belonging, contribution, and success, and every student will develop responsibility and show respect for others as well as oneself.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the consent agenda, and on the consent agenda is 4.1 minutes from the previous month's meeting, 4.2 claims as submitted, 4.3 staff adjustments as submitted, 4.4 treasurer's report is submitted, 4.5, whoa, sorry, I got a little crazy there. Change order number 111 for Memorial Stadium. 4.6 are the policies, and we have 1111 equity in Grand Island Public Schools on final read, 7850 animals in the school final read, 8650 participation in extracurricular activities final read, 9211 district annual report final read, 8415 medications in schools first read, 8530 safety and general welfare first read, 8655 student concussions first read. 4.7 is the grant report update. 4.8 are contracts as presented, including the Sixpence Child Care Partnership Agreement, and 4.9 is the approval of agenda as submitted. This is the consent agenda as published. Would anyone like to remove any items or add any items to the consent agenda? Does anyone have any conflict of interest on agenda item 5.2? If so, please state the check number that you're abstaining from. Okay, and I'll take a motion. Dr. Brose.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second, Ms. Wolf. Any discussion? Please vote. And Julie, can you move Mr. Mayfield's to like the blue abstaining? Just the middle. Okay. Thank you.
Motion passed.
All right. Some exciting times here now. We're going to start with the oath of offices for Mr. Mayfield. And Robin, did you want to do both of them at the same time or separately, or?
Usually do separate if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. So Mr. Mayfield, will you please come forward?
Welcome. Thank you. So school board members, before taking office, shall take and sign the following oath and affirmation. So if you will repeat after me. I, Timothy Mayfield, do solemnly swear
I, Timothy Mayfield, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservations or for purposes or evasion,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservations or for purpose or evasions,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of the School District of Grand Island,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of Member of Board of Education of the School District of Grand Island,
according to law, to the best of my ability, and I do further swear
according to law and to the best of my ability. And I do further swear
that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
And that during such time that I am in this position,
And that during such time that I am in this position,
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome to the board. I need you to sign. And that can be, oh, yep, this is one copy. All right. And then I've just put together the board member code of ethics, and we always read that in January, so that's for you to have. And then you are considered under our staff policies when you use our electronic devices. So when you have a minute, if you would sign that and get it back to me.
Sure.
And then the final one is our operating principles. And again, in January, we go through those, and it's just a good review of what your expectations are and that you are a team and a board. And then I'll also need a signature on that when you get a chance.
All right, wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Right. Mr. Mayfield, before you take your seat, do you want to introduce your special guest that you have?
Yes, today with me I have my wonderful, amazing, talented, brilliant wife, Liz, my 3 children, Cassia, Wyatt, and Connor, and my mother-in-law, Mary.
All right. Awesome. And anything you'd like to say at this time?
At this time.
Okay, you can take your seat and you're official. All right, now we will have the oath of office for our new student rep, Kendall Bartling. Want to come forward?
Welcome. Thank you. So school board members, before taking office, shall take and sign the following oath of affirmation. So if you'll repeat after me. I, Kendall Bartling, do solemnly swear
I, Kendall Bartling, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation or for purpose of evasions,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservations or for purpose or evasions,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of the School District of Grand Island,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of the School District of Grand Island,
according to law, to the best of my ability.
according to law, to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear
And I do further swear
that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence,
that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence,
and that during such time that I am in this position,
and that during such time that I am in this position,
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence,
I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or this state by force or violence.
so help me God.
So help me God.
And I need you to sign that. And welcome to the Board of Education.
Thank you.
All right, and so if you want to introduce yourselves and if you have something to share with us?
Sure. This is my family. That is my mother, my grandparents, and my stepmother as well. And I do have a short introduction that I'd like to give. President Hinkle, Superintendent Dr. Grover, and members of the board, it is an honor to be standing here today in front of you in my unique position. My grandmother, who is here with me today, entered elementary school here in the Grand Island Public School District back in 1955. I am proud to say that my family has been wearing purple and has had gold in our veins for over 65 years, continuing through my mother, my sisters, and now me. I stand here the first of my family to ever become a member of the National Honor Society at Grand Island Senior High, the first of my family to become a class officer, and soon I will be sitting here, the first of my family to sit on that side of the desk. I'm glad to say that Grand Island Public Schools is an organization in a district that does not say we can't, but rather says how can we? An attitude that students, staff members, and administrators show not only while they're working and learning here, but as well as outside of the school district. It is a great honor to continue my family's tradition of Islander pride as a school board representative for the school year, and I look forward to our cooperation. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
We'll move on to 7.1. We have some special recognition that Mrs. Worthington, can you share that with us, the recognition for Dr. Grover? Surprise, I'm sorry, I should have told you. It's just that you probably know a little bit more about it than I do.
I'd be happy to. Just guess I didn't look at that. Several of us are members of NSPRA. It's the National PR Association Group for School Officials. Jack Sheard was an active member. Kelly Mayhew and I have been as well since I've been here. Great group of people. We get such great information from them. They have a project every year called the Top 25 Superintendents to Watch. And when we saw that come across, Jack and I both said we need to nominate Dr. Grover for this. So it was kind of a lengthy application, and I kind of wish Mr. Sheard were here because he had a little bit of humor in it. I'll have to get some of that to Dr. Grover. But anyway, she was selected as one of 25 superintendents across the country to watch specifically about communication and PR, which we know is something she's very, very good at. So we are very excited for Dr. Grover.
Thank you all so much for that. Now, that always feels a little embarrassing, but very proud of the district. And we always say whatever awards or recognitions that we receive, it really does represent all the work of our staff members, our leaders here in Grand Island Public Schools. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge all of you for your leadership, as well as our community, and certainly hats off to our communications team. They do have a way of getting me to do amazing things when it comes to public relations, and so I'm very fortunate for their support, as well as the leadership and talents that they provide to our school district to represent our students as well as our mission. So thank you so much for your support.
You're welcome. And I think that from the board's perspective, we feel like this is a very hard-earned, well-deserved recognition because you are so committed to transparency and communication. Even when the message may sometimes be things that people don't want to hear, you know it's important to be transparent about it and be upfront and honest, and that is so critical right now. So thank you for showing us the leadership in that way. Congratulations. Anybody else? Did you have something? Or that's okay. Mrs. Albers.
I think we all knew that you were already a superintendent to watch. So.
Yes, here, here. All right. Agenda 8 is a public forum, and I've not received any forms, and so I just want to make sure that there's no one here to speak to the board. Doesn't look like it. So we will move on to agenda item 9, which is our information updates, and the first one is 9.1, an update from the pandemic team. Dr. Dexter, are you taking the lead? Yeah. Okay.
All right, good. All right, welcome. And, you know, this is kind of a fun opportunity because when I started thinking back, and I've kept a journal when all this started, and it's about this thick of just the day-to-day things that happened, and kind of going back through that and thinking, wow, we survived all of that. And so tonight we're going to be sharing what different members of the pandemic team have accomplished and where we're at, so you can see the different topics we're going to go through. So if we can go to the background. And the GIPS pandemic team, this is our mantra. I acknowledge what's working today might not work tomorrow. And so we are constantly brainstorming, problem solving, collecting data and research to make decisions. And you see the names, Amanda Levos, Ashley Tomjack, Chris Bruman, Corey Gearhart, Dan Petch, Jennifer Worthington, Jonathan Dahl, Kelly Mayhew, Kim Grimm, Lee Jacobson, Phil Kuhl, Renee Engel, Tawana Grover, Dr. Bennett, or Todd Bennett, Tony Palmer, Kate Crow, Chris Bellman, Lauren Rathman, Virgil Harden, and Wayne Stelk. And I feel it's really important to read their names because the dedications of these leaders has been awesome and have got us to this point today. So some background. Again, I went back through my date book and journals, and we formally started meeting every day on Friday, March 13th, Friday the 13th, 2020. And we were on spring break. And about 2 weeks before, Lee Jacobs and I pulled out our pandemic response plan because we have one. Never thought we'd ever have to use it. And we started kind of tweaking it. Dr. Grover started sending us, things that she'd kind of stolen from this district and that district. And so we started compiling kind of the bones of our pandemic plan. The collaboration with Grand Island Central Catholic, Harton Lutheran, Trinity Lutheran, and Grand Island Northwest was awesome from the start. Right from the start, we came together in here and announced that we would be going to remote in March. And that's when I went back and really hit home again that we went on spring break and never came back for that semester. So that was tough for staff and for students. Also, the collaboration with Mayor Steele, area physicians, and Central District Health Department. And the Central District Health Department continues to be a strong partner in helping us make the decisions we make. We also had support from Nebraska Department of Education, School Boards Association, our Educational Service Unit 10 in Kearney. Really, this has been, to me, the best collaboration we've had with ESU 10 and the support. So that really brought out their skill set. Education Advisory Board, their research has been critical to some of the decisions we've had to make. And then we have other research organizations. And when you look at that team of people that's on the pandemic team, very, very, very bright, well-read people. And they come to the table with research-based support for a decision or in defense of another one. So then we started with how to provide e-learning to all students in GIPS the week after spring break. So kids stayed out of learning so that we brought our staff back. Within a week, they were up and running and ready to implement remote learning. Next was our plan to feed all students in GIPS, and this was unreal. And Chris Spellman and her team, Lauren Rathman, that was our first major problem-solving process because we had staff, frontline staff, that were actually handing out food to people in one of the worst times of the pandemic. And so we really monitored that and their health and their safety. And Virgil's team was great about, okay, you need PPE, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, you need water station or hand washing stations. It was just every day. We were looking for things to keep them safe. Then our next was our social emotional learning strategies to support students, staff, and families. We knew that engaging kids in academic construction was very important, but the trauma that we have all faced through the pandemic, but when you have young kids who all of a sudden don't have their friends to go to and their teacher, that was rough. And so our social workers, we typically meet once a month. They were meeting every week to brainstorm ways to support staff, to support kids, to monitor kids, and keep that social emotional learning at the forefront. Then it was to secure funds for PPEs, cleaning supplies, and equipment. The list that Virgil's team had to go through in order to support staff to be safe when we came back into school in August. It really did start in March and continues to this day. But I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he finds the money and the time and all of the equipment, because everything we needed was in short supply. So being able to work through that. We also had 6 GIPS design teams, and they were led by cabinet and department heads. Each one of those teams had representatives of elementary, middle school, high school staff, support staff, and they began meeting in probably about April, May, and then met all through the summer to be able to prepare to open up in August with our reimagined model. The weekly communication with staff, that's one thing we learned. You know, we've tried the newsletter and different things, and our staff really went out of their way to talk about how much they appreciated hearing from our team, you know, what we problem solved, what we accomplished, what we were sharing, what we backed off from. It was kind of, everybody was looking forward to that Wednesday communication, and that's something that we've continued this year. And then the town hall meetings were so well received. You know, when Dr. Grover just went out and opened up and said, this is where we are. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, but today this is where we are. And so that open, honest communication, asking for questions from our community was huge in keeping the pandemic team brainstorming process going. Okay, so now.
So one of the things that the team took into consideration right from the beginning was, you know, what are the case rates and what do those look like, not only in our community, but also in the state and in the nation. And if you recall back when we first went to spring break and we made the decision to close school and go remote learning, you know, there weren't many cases around. You can see on the graph that that's the case, but it didn't take too long before Grand Island and a couple other areas in the state of Nebraska became hotspots. And so this was nearly daily communication talking about where it is, where it's going, what news and media we could digest as a team in order to continue to process what the expectation was for these graphs and charts as we move through the weeks and eventually the months. And you'll see here, these I actually got off of the Healthy Nebraska site today. And the reason it says the Harvard GHI, there's several different models that are out there in regards to what it takes to safely and successfully contain this pandemic. And so as we've looked at various different models, you know, we kind of settled in with the Harvard. There's also the UNMC model, which is good. It's a little stricter as far as how they classify the levels. But as you look at this, you can see where Hall County, right back in early May, in middle May, when we really had that outbreak that kind of put our community into a situation where we started to take notice that this was very serious and there's implications, and the mask wearing started and the campaign to get the community involved in that. And you'll notice that from those efforts, we've been able to do a pretty good job at reducing that. You will see that as it goes through time here, and I apologize it's not a little bit bigger, but you'll see that as the restrictions started to ease late in July, and then as we got into starting school, you can see that it's kind of fluctuating a little bit now. And I think that, you know, the community in general, it's just really important that we continue to reinforce and focus on wearing those masks, social distancing, and hand sanitizing as an effort to keep our community safe, our students safe, our staff safe, but also keep our students in school and learning. And I compared this, as you'll see, with the all counties. So this is all counties in the state of Nebraska, and you'll see that, you know, Grand Island right now is doing better. You know, we're down in that yellow band about halfway, and that fluctuates. We are still, you know, occasionally we'll see some hiccups with testing results coming in a timely manner and things like that, but we're taking all that into account as we look at these graphs. You'll see the Hall County test positivity rate. It's not just the number of new positives, it's also, as you're testing those folks, how many of those tests are coming back positive. And we've been all over the board from, I want to say back in the May timeframe, we were in the 30s and 40s, and now we're down to 8. You know, you'd really like to see that in the 5% range. So there's a little bit of work the community can continue to do on that front. So these are the dashboards. You know, one of the things that kept coming out from our town halls and our meeting with stakeholder groups is that they really want to see, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my students and my family in GIPS? And so, you know, taking into consideration all of the privacy issues that surround things with healthcare information, we did reach out to the health department and said, okay, we want to be as transparent as possible with our staff and with our families. So what information can we get and deliver on a weekly basis out to our community and put that out there and show our stakeholders what is the status of GIPS today. And you'll notice those are two curves. Students, it shows both the blue line quarantine and then the red line of students' positivity rates. Those are as of the day, so it's as of the Thursday update. And you can see that we've dipped and we've gone about where we were on the student quarantine, and then on the staff side, we had quite a few quarantine. They've come off in a week, and then we have a few more back on. But when you look at those numbers, it's 8, 6. That's really good when you consider that, we have teaching staff around 800 and all staff in the neighborhood of 13. So, and then of course some support and some part-time. So we have a lot of staff and we have a lot of students, 10,000 students, and we're in the 40s for students that are quarantined. And thanks to the policies that the pandemic team has been really instrumental in helping craft for the reimagined reintroduction plan, we've been able to, I think, keep those as much as possible into isolated single students. Obviously, we've had a couple of situations where we did need to take the steps to quarantine an entire class, but for the most part, we're able to identify anybody that the students or staff have come in contact with and be able to really target that so that we're not missing out on that learning and that opportunity. So that covers the dashboards and the rates, and these are out on the GIPS website under Reimagined. You can click on the COVID-19 dashboard and it'll be there, and we'll be updating that continually every Thursday afternoon.
And I forgot to mention, when I saw that graph, it just takes your breath away, especially when you were living it when that was so high. And I just remember Beth Bartlett. We also have a committee that meets every week, made up of community members and organizations that support families and kids. But Beth Bartlett was giving a report on the hospital and the people that were in ICU, literally crying as she was giving this report because it was so scary. And so then when you see that we dropped, and a lot because of that committee and our own Jack Sheard, who had the mask up GI, we made that huge difference. And then you start to see it creep back up because we're all starting to get a little lax on where we go and what we do and wearing the mask. So just so important. And again, the data, Corey pointed out that he had presented the Harvard data. The thing that's really difficult is right now there's so much data from different people, and it's like, well, do you just say, we're only going to go with this set? But you really can't, because you might need something from that set of data and that set of data. So that whole team researching and looking at data is so important. So the next piece is essential workers, and this kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. We had the declaration of essential workers as our first responders, our nurses, our doctors, that they test positive, then they stay home. Otherwise, they're on the job. Our protocol is that our staff, if they've been around with someone with close contact and CDHD says you need to quarantine for 14 days, we have staff stay home. But then the CDC came out with new guidance that educators can be essential workers. And so again, we brought that back to the team and talked about what do we want to do for our staff? And again, we go back to our nutrition service workers. We're on that front line. Chris Spellman had this rotating teams so that if they needed to quarantine, she could pull another team and they could keep food going for kids. But it was so important to have the opportunity for those staff to quarantine, feel safe, monitor for symptoms, come back, or if they needed to stay home when symptoms developed. So we chose as a pandemic team and as a district that we were going to honor our GIPS protocol for staff, that they are going to quarantine for the 14 days, and we're going to make it work. That we're not going to label them as essential workers and force them to come back before we feel they need to. So kind of a short synopsis of essential workers. Okay. Next slide. So then quarantine protocols. And we have a COVID building response team, which is made up of myself. Chris Broman is our lead nurse. I do not know what we'd do without her. She's phenomenal with all of her research, her contacts. She can call CDHD on a Saturday evening and get a response and get a decision. So she's just been awesome. And then we have our building nurse at the building level. We have our principal. And then we have our CDHD contact, which right now is John Imagino, who has been with us since I've been here. And again, I can call her any time, any day, and she responds and she gets after. And they are after the contact tracing and have done just an excellent job of that and getting us there. They have also, our nurses, we now have 4 nurses trained to do swab tests at school so that we can get a test taken, submitted, and have priority to get it back sooner so that we can keep kids in school. So that if we know they test negative, they can come back to school. And then we have a whole flow chart of what do we look for when, student that is waiting on COVID test results must be excluded until results are available. And then we walk through what does it mean for them to come back. Well, it's 24 hours fever-free without fever-reducing medicine and other symptoms haven't improved. What if that student that tests positive for COVID who has symptoms and then at least 10 days and then you have the student with symptoms not tested. And so then that changes. It's changed at least 3 times since school started. But right now it's 2 of the following or at least 1, which fever, new cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, and loss of taste and smell are the biggies that we're really seeing as identifiers of the symptoms. Talked to a couple people that have lost their sense of taste and smell, and they said it is so weird that you really notice you've lost your sense of taste and smell. So those are things we work with. Our nurses and secretaries, they have been amazing. They have to go through this on every kid that calls in and says, well, we've got symptoms, but I think it's allergies, so I keep them home. Yes, and get to a doctor. If the doctor can rule it out, you can come back to school. We had really great success with parents not sending kids to school with symptoms, but with all the allergies and stuff, I think parents it's just like they need to be in school. I don't want to keep them home. So we've really had to juggle that and monitor those symptoms. But we have those protocols in place that have been so helpful. And again, our nursing department has just been off the charts with getting all that ready for us. Oops. And now CCFI.
Good evening. I'm Lee Jacobson. I'm the school safety coordinator. Obviously, as you can tell, it's falls here. If you've stepped outside for a little bit, so I was asked to do the CCFI, and it made me think about a situation that when I was a little bit younger, I had an old Marine tell me one time, if you make it through the first week of battle, you're either lucky or you're doing something right. Second week, that means you're doing something right. Okay. I think we're doing something right now. One thing is it's not a battle, it's a war right now. So what we need to do is we need to continue doing those right things, keeping our kids in school. That's our main mission, is to make sure we get education done. So one of those things would be quality checks that we need to do, and that's where this CCFI comes from. So let's define what we got here. CCFI means COVID compliance for implementation. So pretty much what that means is it's going to be like a collection of data that helps us find what is working and what we need to implement for improvement if we need it. So in order for us to get that data, we're going to have monitors that will be out. We actually have them started already, completing real-time surveys at the schools regarding the following areas, and that's going to be what we have for mask covers, social distancing, hand washing, and sanitation when we have within our reimagined program. Now, those sections are going to be divided into 3 other ones because we want to make sure the students are doing it right, staff is doing it right, and we also want to make sure that we have visitors that come in that follow those protocols as well. So that data, that once we get it collected, it's going to be available to all district administration and including the administration at the pandemic team. So that everybody can look at that, and it's going to be real-time data that they'll have, and that's going to allow them insight just to see where we have some positive areas, because, you know, obviously, if we're having positive areas, we want to let our school know that we're doing good things, and that way you guys can know that too. If we have areas that start to fall off, we need to see those as soon as possible so that we can find those areas. We know you might have a school that's doing something and they're doing really good. Maybe we can apply that to another place that needs that, so we can keep that together. So the monitors that are out there, what we're using is we're using in staff. It'll be our substitute teachers. But obviously, as you know from seeing some of the data, some of our substitute teachers, we use a lot of them a lot. So for right now, think of this as just starting out, okay? We just started this, so we got about a week's worth of data, and we only have 1 monitor that's helping with myself. That would be Jason Newman. He's doing an awesome job. He's been hitting a lot of different schools, so it's worked out pretty good. When Jason came in, when those monitors come in, we do a training, because obviously we want them to know what our protocols are under Reimagined. And so for those areas that we're collecting that data on. A monitor is going to be required just like anybody else, especially since they're going to different buildings. They're going to be required to come in and get checked in, and then before they start their surveys. And they will be surveying in one day multiple areas. So they might be an hour here, 15 minutes there, depends on the data. So the next slide I'm going to show you is going to be a slide that has some of the data we have now. Now please, you got to take this, what my grandma used to say, with a grain of salt, because we have very limited data numbers on this. So you may have, like, for example, at Lincoln, we've done that check just 1 there, and it was an entrance area, and they only have 28 kids coming through there, and it was done on them. So if you have 1 kid that didn't have a mask on, your numbers are very low. So we're going to have to wait till we get up to the thousands. So we got about a week's worth of data. But as you can see, we're actually doing very, very well in all those areas. More buildings as we get through the monitoring, and we get more monitors out there, we can have that. That, again, will be real time. So once those get put into the system, they automatically come up. Now what you're seeing here is just an overall coverage of protocol. They can be separated out to buildings. They can be separated out by those categories that we had. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Well, good evening. I always like to follow Lee because, he's a tough act to follow. He has good one-liners. I don't have any Marine Corps or drill sergeant quotes, so I apologize. But so $2.1 million is basically an entitlement Grand Island Public Schools has for the CARES Act funding. About $100,000 of that is for the non-public schools in the community. And so Chris Schneider took care of that and is working with them closely to make sure that they allocate their resources. And so Dr. Grover, the cabinet, really the COVID-19 team all worked on identifying costs that we thought we needed to cover with these funds. We prioritized that as a cabinet. And then myself, Dr. Dexter, Stephanie Tomjack all worked on putting the application together. We submitted that. We did receive some feedback. They have 4 or 5 things they want tweaked. So we're working on that. Hopefully have that to them by the end of the week. And so expect approval probably mid part of next week. It is a reimbursement basis thing. So as far as finding the money, we're spending our money in hopes that they send us a check. So it usually works out for us. And so we have high confidence in that regard. And so with that, I would conclude my comments.
I just have a quick question, because I know that there was a federal court ruling, I think last week, about the money going to the private, or to the non-public schools.
Yes, there was a stay that was issued at the federal court level that my understanding, I don't have an in-depth knowledge of it.
Okay.
But basically, the federal court stopped the flow of any kind of money going to, I guess, private schools, for lack of a better term. I don't know that that's in the CARES Act money or if there's multiple pots of money
Okay.
in this, so it could be in other pieces of the legislation. The CARES Act is one small piece of the many billion dollars going out through the federal government. So, yes, that's there. I'm aware of it. I don't know that it impacts anything we're doing with the CARES Act. I believe that's related to what the governors have control over.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. So my team's been responsible for spending some of that money, and I think we've been doing a pretty good job. I'll talk about this sheet a little bit later on as I go through things, but you know, we did see this coming just watching as the things were transpiring across the world, and so my team was a little ahead of this. In particular, kudos to Kim Grimm, my assistant, and Todd Bennett in the warehouse working to try to stockpile materials for this. But it was quite a challenge, you know. We got started here heavy shutdown in March. We were engaged in, we'll call it logistics dance with suppliers and vendors with trying to obtain PPE. You know, we were embarked on a historic 2021 school year opening with about 95% of the identified necessary items that we needed, which I think was really pretty good. We literally had deliveries coming in the week before, a week of school starting that were necessary for us to, you know, kick off our plans to keep kids safe, clean classrooms, clean the buildings, all throughout the day. This page here identifies some of those items. If you look at that, you know, $128,000 of PPE that is just that. We've also put money into some other measures to, you know, for equipment, plexiglass screens, things of that nature, to just follow protocols that we established with our pandemic team. You know, this is an entire new listing we actually created just to track our PPE. So, you know, we're still having some, you know, challenges procuring some items, you know, in particular like a touchless sanitizers that we ordered back in April, and we don't expect to get them till the end of the year. Now, we just make sure I qualify this saying we do have other measures in place, for sanitizing in classrooms and things of that nature. But these are some of the last things that have just been super hard to get: the nitrile gloves, disinfectant wipes, disposable masks, especially the kid size. You know, starting to get a little concerned just on our paper towel stock, trash can liners, things of that nature. I think we're pretty, I feel that we are moving forward, that we have what we need, and we are looking at, you know, other vendors, if some of our vendors that we've always, you know, had contracts with, and so we've also went to others to try to secure these materials. And so every day is different, and we'll continue to work this. One thing that we did do is we had to change from going from a green product, a 103 for cleaning our classrooms, to a halt disinfectant and a Sanity 10 sanitizer that are used in the classrooms on a daily basis. One of the protocols is to actually have the kids help with this cleaning process throughout the day, so they can, teacher uses that Sanity 10, can spray those desktops, and the kids wipe those down with paper towels and throw them in the trash can. And that occurs several times throughout the day, in between especially like class changes and stuff like that. So So far, everything's been working really well, and I'm happy to say my observations, just watching our students and our staff wear the masks and follow these protocols has been amazing. So really, kudos to everyone in the district for trying to make us safe and keep us healthy. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
I'm not questioning this, I just have a question about it. 458 Hawkeye non-contact infrared thermometers, $22,000. Where are they? Who
They're
has them?
Every classroom.
Okay.
One of the protocols we have is to monitor, not just before you come in to the building, but also throughout the day. And that way, if, let's say, a student gets missed, the classroom teacher has the ability to go ahead and check that student's temperature right then and there. Our protocol is if the student does have an elevated temperature, then they'll go down to the office. We have what we call an isolation room, and then allow the nurse to go ahead and assess if there's an issue, and then take it from there. So thanks for that.
Well, kudos to everyone that's been involved with this, because it's a monumental thing to get all this stuff that everyone else in the country is trying to get. That's really difficult. My favorite line item, though, is the 335 gallons of hand sanitizer from UNL for $0. Awesome.
Exactly. This is a historical event, folks, and it's been great to see a lot of help come from a lot of different sources, and we've seen that, and we hope it continues, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm just feeling really blessed to have the work of this team, because it's allowed us to have kids in school. And that's one of the most important things. So when I look back when Dr. Dexter was talking, I was like, started to feel that sense of anxiety. I was on spring break when I got the call. I said, you need to be joining us in some meetings. We're gonna have a change of plans. And so, that we started working with the team right away to say, how are we gonna help our teachers be prepared for this? Like, what training do they need? What guidance do they need? I mean, this is new. Some teachers have never had a Google Classroom before. Now they're like, that's a lot, I got this. I got Google Classroom. But so we spent a lot of hours preparing the lessons and the guidance for the teachers and the Zoom trainings, and just spending time with them, helping them prepare for students as best we can. And so when I think back to that, I think, oh, that was a lot of work. But the work didn't stop. The work continued over the summer, because we know that as students participated in e-learning in the spring, that they did not have the high-quality instruction that we hold close to our hearts. We know that our kids need it. And so we spent the time over the summer really, we did our research, in the spring. And then as we pulled in task force members, we applied that research, and we said, how do we make sure that we are designing our instruction to address our student needs, to address the unfinished learning that our kids, that we know our kids are going to come to us with. So, the task force, they spent extra hours over the summer. We did some extra trainings and really looked at our curriculum and said, where in our curriculum are we going to have these gaps? Where are these standards that were to be taught in the spring going to show up in our curriculum this next year? And so that's how we designed instruction and the guidance for our teachers this year. And we're going to have a lot more about that next month. We're going to bring you some preliminary data based on our universal screeners and our early assessments. We're right in the midst right now of MAT testing and DIVLS testing, which is our early K-1 assessment. And so far, so good. Things are rolling. Virtual school obviously has created a few challenges with navigating some of these assessments. We've been working with NWA and NDE just to make sure that we have all the tools and the resources. The IT department, I can't say enough about their partnership, working with our teachers and our principals to really help them get the things that they need, and our parents and our students. So, you know, our tech department used to be for Grand Island Public Schools. They are for all of Grand Island Public Schools in our community. And so when parents are sending in Let's Talk, they're helping parents, they're helping our students. And so it goes way beyond just our teachers, which is so appreciated. So kudos to Brittany Bills, her leadership with the professional learning and the high quality resources to ensure our teachers know how to explicitly teach reading. The feedback that we're getting from teachers right now are just, we feel really good about where our kids are. We feel like we're able to address their needs and that we're going to continue to move them forward. And that those early opportunities to teach that reading is huge, and they're taking advantage of every moment. And I don't know if you saw the story last night on News 4, but we're hearing that from all the teachers. I mean, Dave White's awesome out at Shoemaker, but all of our K-1 teachers also are saying, we feel really confident about our ability to teach explicit reading skills to our kids. And that's really encouraging because we know this has a huge impact on their future as far as reaching that graduate profile. Our EL, you know, in the spring, we had to close down the Welcome Center, and that is typically the time that we assess our newcomers or our students coming into kindergarten. And so we actually had to assess, I think I have a number here somewhere, at least 346 students. 261 of them were kindergarten, and we needed to test them within the first few weeks of school. And so the EL specialists in each building, they took that on, really spent the time with the teachers to make sure they had access to the students, to make sure that we were providing them with the most appropriate programming and supports. And so a lot of work has been done on everybody's part to make that happen. Our staff have been adapting. They're doing what it takes as they think about how to work together to address student needs. And so we're trying things that we really were saying, oh, yeah, we're going to try that. We're going to kind of take it slow. We're not taking it slow. We're just saying if this is a need, we're going to do it. And then the teachers are really just being really responsive to that. When we think about our in virtual and our on-site, one of the biggest things that we were concerned about when we were designing the virtual school schedule was pacing. It's really important for our students to stay on pace with the curriculum to make sure that our kids are getting the knowledge and skills that they need in order to be successful. And right now we are on pace, and we're feeling really good about that. So as we talk to teachers about where are you in your curriculum, we're really aligned at this point, and that's really important to us because we want to make sure that our students that are in virtual school are getting a high quality education as well. And there are challenges, and our teachers are, they're amazing. I mean, they're resilient, and even though we might have some technical challenges and access, some students might have access issues, they're right on it, addressing it, working with IT and their support teams to help our families make sure that they have what they need. So that's been really important to us. The other part is the professional learning for remote learning. So this is another consideration that as we were planning the professional learning for this year, not only for our virtual school teachers, which continues to be ongoing, but for all of our teachers. So all of our teachers had a remote instruction course that they took before school started. And it really was to prepare them for if we need to go into Select or back into remote, how to navigate Google Classroom or Canvas and design those classrooms so that they are easy access for kids. What we learned in the spring was that because we didn't know how to design those online classrooms, that sometimes kids had trouble finding the links, navigating the curriculum. And so we've really learned a lot, and we're applying it, and it's much more accessible to our students. We continue to focus on our essential standards as we think about curriculum and instruction. So our teachers are coming together once a month to dig into that, make sure that we're staying on track and really focused in on those essential standards. And then assessment development, looking at common assessments. Kate Crow has been amazing working through the Synergy, uploading everything out into Synergy so it's easy access, not only for our teachers, but that our students can also take those assessments online, especially if they were paper pencil in the past. Now they're accessible to all students, and that data also will now live in Synergy. So we're continuing to build on that. We knew our professional learning communities were going to be big levers, and so that's really a focus for us. It has been the last 2 years, but we're really, our principals are really tuning into supporting our professional learning communities. So as our teachers are talking about what our kids need to know and be able to do, we're really explicit about those skills and about those standards, and they're designing their lessons really intentionally focused on that. This is also the place where they're identifying when there is unfinished learning. So if they're at a point in the curriculum that some of these standards have come into play, they're really designing, do we need to do a pre-assessment here and assess where students are, and do we need to have an intervention to address some of those skill sets that students are needing. My team, we've started to get out into buildings. We were a little cautious about that at first. We wanted to get school started, but now we're out and we're getting into buildings. And our supports are really focused around the professional learning communities, but also around the high quality instruction and the fidelity, the implementation of our high quality resources. That was something that we knew is really going to make a difference, is are our teachers using our high quality resources as they were intended to be using? And we want to be able to provide them with the support and the professional learning that they need in that case. We are also there to support principals. So if we're noticing that there's a need for some support, we're working with the principals to help them in their leadership address those needs. Canvas implementation, so the high school, one thing that really surfaced last year with our high schoolers is they would go to one class and they have to navigate Google Classroom, and in another class they would navigate Canvas, and they might have 2 or 3 different platforms that they were trying to navigate throughout the year. And it really created an equity issue, and we recognized that right away as we listened to feedback from students and parents and teachers. And so we had a plan to actually adopt Canvas as our one platform, but it was going to be a year-long implementation. Well, we did that in 1 month. So we took a year's worth of implementation, put it into 1 month. We felt very strongly about how important this was for our students on their end to just have that one platform. So our teachers have been really great, and we have Canvas wizards at the high school that are trained and are supporting each other, but we have ongoing professional learning for our staff around the use of Canvas. And so, we're really feeling pretty good that we were able to accomplish that, and, are thinking that our kids are in a better place because of it as well. Our leaders, our principals, with everything that they've had to do to get ready for this year, I mean, just the change in their approach. We really been working on instructional leadership, and we had to go back to some operational things to prepare for this. They had to make sure that they had all the protocols in place, their staffing supports, and of course they're dealing with teachers that might have to be quarantined and trying to navigate students that are in quarantine and making sure they're getting the support. So there's just a lot of ongoing decisions that they're making on a daily basis. And on top of that, we want to make sure that our kids are getting the education that they need. So that's definitely weighing on their minds. So one of the things that we're implementing is just a leadership cohort. So our principals are meeting once a month as cohorts, and they're really focusing in on, hey, what's going well in your schools? What are some of the things that you're doing that's working? Getting into classrooms and doing some calibration walks to make sure that they are continuing to build themselves as leaders. Grading for equity work, we recognize too that some of our grading practices were creating inequities. That really surfaced in the spring as well when we were talking about grades. That was a really hot topic. We want to make sure that we are grading kids on what they know. And so we're really digging into what does grading for equity look like, and how do we build that mindset, that mindset that's not about a compliance about how we grade or percentage and how we grade. It's how we think about the feedback that we give to students and what does it mean to them. So that's part of our leadership work this year. And then our principals are keeping action boards, school improvement plans. A lot of times you would see, we'll set some long-term goals and we'll check them at the end of the year. These are really short-term goals that they're developing weekly goals that they want to accomplish, and then they're doing what we're calling trend walks to check in on those instructional practices to say we really want to get better at this, and we're going to really measure it this week. And if we don't get better, we're going to do some professional learning, and then we're going to check it again the next week. And so it's really more of a short-term approach to monitoring how we are doing. So next month, I we'll be bringing to you some data. We're really excited to be able to take a look at what our initial data is telling us and dig into that to make sure that we're making good instructional decisions to support our students going into this next trimester. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
I know one of the concerns that people had when we went to remote, by the time the end of the school year rolled around, people were worried that, did my child get all the things that he or she was supposed to get during that 3-month period of time when we weren't meeting kids face to face? And I heard you saying that, I think I heard you say that we're up to speed with pacing. So how are we reconciling, I'm gonna call it regression, because that's what it's called, with pacing this early in the school year?
Yeah, and next month I'll bring you a visual. I think that will really help because it really did come with planning for the curriculum for this year. We really looked at, did a deep dive into what were the standards that our students should have learned in the spring and what did they have access to. And if they didn't have, and we can't guarantee that they had access to those standards, whether or not a teacher taught them or students learned them. So we identified where in our curriculum, so if they were 5th grader and it's 6th grade, they're in 6th grade now, where in their 6th grade curriculum are these standards going to show up? And we want to target that when they get to that unit to make sure it's in-time learning to support the additional learning that they need to do moving forward. Yeah, it's great. No, it's a great question. It's one that we are asking too, so great one. Any others? Right.
Hi, really quick, I just wanted to say thank you so much for making a one platform. I can tell you, going through the last couple of months of last year, it was a nightmare to find out if they had emailed you the Zoom link, if they had sent it to you on Google.
I'm sorry.
It was no, it's all good. Thank you so much for all the hard work you've put in. We really do appreciate it as students.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback too. Appreciate that.
Middle school sports and activities, and middle school is near and dear to my heart. I love teaching kids, and I like being the principal at the middle school. And then I have the opportunity to meet with middle school activities directors, Kevin Jenkins, Cody Wheeler, Chuck DeWitt, and Cindy Wells. In non-COVID times, we would meet once a month at 6:30 in the morning at Perkins and solve all the problems of the world for middle school activities. So when COVID hit and we were really planning on, senior high was a priority for activities and sports, but we started meeting in June. And, oops, just lost my, sorry. Started meeting early June, and as a team talking about, okay, how can we keep middle school kids engaged? And we went through all kinds of problem solvings. We built scenarios, but it really came down to, we first tried to organize for weights and conditioning for middle school. We just didn't have the space and the staff to keep kids safe and have that this summer. But we kept talking about, okay, what can we do for the fall? And so when we started talking about football, volleyball, and cross country, these kids are kind of on top of each other in the middle schools. They can't spread out like we can at senior high. You also have kids that are literally dragging football equipment home, walking home. And so in order to keep that clean, typically we just bring it in, lay it all out on the floor, wash it down, and it's ready to go the next day. Well, that's not going to meet a directed health measure, and we just couldn't figure out a way to do that. Same thing with volleyball, and we typically use 3 gyms, 2 of the elementaries and the middle school gym. So we had kids spread all over the place. That just didn't set well. Then the just locker room space, showers, cleaning of equipment. We couldn't figure out a way to make all that happen. And then our buses, our after-school activity buses are packed. And we just couldn't figure out a way, okay, we can keep kids here, but how do we get them home? And, when Holiday Travel said, we can't double and triple up activity buses in the evening, we just don't have that many buses. So the transportation, again, was another issue. It has been painful. when you meet with these ADs who are passionate about keeping middle school kids engaged and active, it's kind of heart-wrenching. So, and then we continue to bring our ideas to the pandemic team, and just could not prove that we could keep kids safe and still have middle school activities. And when you think about when we had to quarantine high school football team, over 100 students and 9 teachers, when you think about 3 different football teams, 3 different schools, in a much more concentrated space, we just couldn't see that we'd be able to keep our staff and our students in school. We continue to monitor. We meet again next Wednesday, 6:30 in the morning via Zoom. Talk about winter sports, girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling. And we also have Quiz Bowl, Spelling Bee. What can we do to engage middle school kids? And so that continues to be ongoing, and we continue to take it back to the pandemic team. So, questions about that? I know I've been getting concerned parents, and it is. How do I keep my student engaged? And then, Dr. Grover, I had you still for phase 4, but were you going to do that?
I sure can.
Okay.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you to the pandemic team for coming tonight and providing a very thorough update. And certainly we will entertain any questions. I think it was very prudent upon the team to kind of walk us back through, because we are indeed still on a journey. Sometimes we think that, March didn't happen, May didn't happen, the beginning of school. And so all of that is relevant as we have to look back at what we've learned, what we've gained, new information, as we continue to make decisions for Grand Island Public Schools. So as we move into phase 4, we continue to engage with the Central District Health Department, the Commissioner, our ESU 10, all of the folks to just gather a lot of information and understanding. One of the things that has come front and center this week is not just looking at the numbers for today, but really watching what has occurred and reflecting on across the country. And what we can predict for the future. And so the decisions that we make today, certainly they will extend beyond just today. The commissioner did an update at the state level this week with the governor, and basically his message was, now is not the time to loosen restrictions. As we talked to Central District Health Department this week, today actually, she certainly was very grateful for the processes that we have in place in Grand Island Public Schools, and definitely is there to support us. Her guidance to us was that the next 6 weeks are going to be very critical, and will definitely have a determining factor as we think about the rest of this fall. So therefore, as we move into phase 4, that we see no major immediate impact to changes for Grand Island Public Schools. We will remain in our reimagined model, and we will continue to implement the safety protocols we have in play. We have been cautioned, and we do take into account as we continue to think about loosening restrictions. We do not want to lose the ground. We all feel so wonderful about the opportunity to have our kids in school, and we've made it. Today marks a month. That's enough to pause on. And it is really due to what was demonstrated here tonight. You looked at the data that was provided by Mr. Gearhart. We also read articles if that's necessary. We research, we call people. So there is a lot of thought that goes into every decision. So I want to thank the community as well as our Board of Education for having a clear focus. I think that's very important. Our focus, and we do believe that the call to action from us and what we are responsible for is keeping our students and staff safe and keeping our kids in school. And so that is what we're doing, and it definitely comes with some very intentional strategic moves in order to make that happen. And we'd like to continue the moves that we have in play so that we can go another month and the next month after that. That is the feedback that I have received from parents. It is just thank you for keeping our kids in school. We do know the impact to Grand Island, which could be different in other places, but our parents have already spoken to us to help us understand the dynamics that if we have to close school, the impact to our community and our families. So I just want to thank you for standing with us and understanding the decisions that we need to make.
So in summary, staff are awesome. I mean, our custodians, crossing guards, secretaries, nurses, nutrition services, our teachers, our support staff. I mean, I haven't heard any complaints from staff. They're glad to be back at work. They appreciate all of the safety precautions and measures we put into place. And they are out there brainstorming every day how to make something work and taking care of students and families and encouraging each other to take care of each other. And that's really important as we research strategies for social emotional learning, is that we support our staff, because it is stressful, and even more so. And when we were talking about schedules, and I was just thinking, I saw a cartoon and this little kid was all down and the mom said, "What's up?" And he said, "Zoom. I just figured out it took away our snow days." So, because we can still Zoom. So I thought that was pretty good. Again, reinforcing what Dr. Grover said about our collaboration with Central District Health Department, continuing to meet as a pandemic team. I mean, we celebrate loss, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate and come together, but we make some really tough decisions and we have some tough discussions. So we've really become kind of a family with our pandemic team. Kind of to echo the parent advisory group, they were just so glad to have their kids back in school, and that was so good to hear. We have a couple of mantras. We can stay in school if we follow safety protocols. It does work. We just have to follow them. We have to be diligent. Lee Jacobson has just really kept all of that going and monitoring with a sense of humor. And he said, I've learned that as an educator and not a highway patrolman, I have to word my direction a little softer. So he's been fun to work with. And then this one, and Virgil, I think, kind of started on it, highest and best, error on the side of caution. And that really, when we're struggling, somebody will always step up with that mantra. And then what does the research tell us based on data? And Corey really leads us with that on, he can dig and find data for about anything, but it also shows us both sides of that data. So it is a real decision-making process and a team that's working really hard. So, questions?
All right. Go ahead, Dr. Brose.
Dr. Dexter, how long does it take from the time a student is tested to the time you get the results back?
Right now, it's running 5 to 7 days.
And then when I think about all the hours, you've got the pandemic team, but you have all these sub-teams under it who are working. The district has invested, I would guess, thousands and thousands of hours in planning to do what we've done so successfully. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been involved, because it's tough enough when it's a regular school year. But this isn't a regular school year and things are not normal. So thank you for going above and beyond and making it work. And then my last statement or comment, it's good to hear that we used ESU 10 as a resource, because as taxpayers, we are assessed a levy for the services they provide the Grand Island Public Schools. And because we're so large, we can't always find ways to use their services. So thank you for including them and for mentioning it tonight.
Ms. Wolf.
Thank you. I want to thank the entire pandemic team for everything that you have done. I know we've had some really difficult decisions to make, and sometimes being in those situations is a thankless job. So I really want to thank everyone for their hard work to help us keep our kids here in school.
Anybody else? I also want to just thank everybody for the information. It was very, very good to hear tonight. I would like to suggest if there's any way we can cut this portion of the board meeting, edit it and then put it out, do some kind of social media campaign. I think we should, because I think it'd be very good for the community to hear how hard we've worked, because I think you have just been outstanding, the whole team, how the district has responded with your leadership and your courage, because you were so well prepared. Even in March, when I know you felt like you were scrambling, you were so well prepared, and the communication and the Facebook Lives, which makes us very vulnerable, but you were out there telling the truth and transparency so that people knew what was happening. Because what I've heard, I work with a lot of people from Iowa, and even in the state, I've heard a lot of people, I just wish I knew what was going on. I wish I knew what was going on. I feel like our parents always had an avenue for finding out what was going on, and for the students. And yes, the decision-making are very tough, but I definitely agree with the one about we have to err on the side of caution. We absolutely do not know enough about this virus yet and its long-term impacts. And if you take a look at the 1918, 1919 pandemic and things that happened 10, 15 years later, we've got to take care of our kids, because we don't know. Hopefully nothing. Hopefully there's no long-term impacts, but if there is, and if we didn't do everything we could, oh my goodness, what would we feel like, several years later? And we know we've gotten a lot of heat over some decisions, especially over the last couple weeks. Sometimes our own constituents are telling us that they disagree with us, and sometimes it's people from other communities. I guess what I just would say is that please respect that we are doing it for the right reasons. We are not trying to be underhanded or evil or gain any kind of an advantage. We are simply doing it because we know the best place for the kids in Grand Island Public Schools are in school. And we have to make the right decisions. So, congratulations and thank you.
Yeah, well, I will definitely share that with the team.
Okay. You're welcome. All right, 9.2 is the attendance update for the August and September. Dr. Dahl.
Good evening, Board of Education, President Hinkle, Mr. Bartling, Mr. Mayfield, welcome, and welcome to you. I am standing on the shoulders of giants here, and I have amazing news to share. I've been studying attendance in GIPS since last year, and the purpose for studying attendance is to improve any of the gaps and as well encourage any of the areas that are already excelling. So here we are at 1 month of school, and let's go with this. We all want to know, how's it going? We want to know how's it going in terms of the numbers, and I have something amazing to share with you. Our attendance as a district is 92.9%, district-wide. In addition, this means we're over 90% in all of our sectors, and I'll define that, meaning our elementary, our middle school, and our high school. Each of them are above 90%. That's amazing. Lastly, building on the incredible work of the pandemic team, and our response to this pandemic has been working with students who were unable to or had difficulty engaging during the spring. They're called GAIN Plan students. GAIN stands for Grow, Achieve, Innovate, Navigate, which are skills that we want every student every day to be a success with. And so we specifically had teachers identify those students so that we could do something with that this year. So as I shared before, these are the numbers. I'll give you just a second to kind of look at that. It's a lot of A lot of data there. You might kind of notice from my previous presentation that I like data. But, sorry, I'm just adjusting here. All right. But some things stand out here that are really positive. One is that our virtual K-5 launched and brand new, not brick and mortar, but more like computer and software, right? But we're above 90% in that building too. I'll call it a building. And you'll notice in the red area, and red is Nebraska, we love our Huskers. So I want to say that red's an area that we're working on. And I've met with the middle schools today and also tomorrow to go over with them attendance. And it's not, how do I say it? It's not just a story of there's something wrong. It's rather identifying who the students are, what are the supports that are needed. But it's not something that we just say, here's the average. We focus on the grade levels. We focus on the teams. So they're incredible education leaders, and we're going to be meeting every other week for the fall just to work on attendance and support kids. So I told you already that the face-to-face attendance, well, actually I didn't. I'll say it now. There's a lot of green on that side. Our face-to-face attendance K-9 is really rock star. It's amazing. And I'm just really excited to see that. And our attendance numbers, if we look at our strategic plan and our 5-year attendance, each year we've been inching up and improving our attendance, and this is a testament to that, I believe. Sorry. So next, I want to compare all students with our students that have gain plans. And the highlight here is not just that we have a lot of improvement with our all student groups, and especially at the high school. Notice that the 9th graders are almost at 95%. Often 9th grade is a grade where not only does dropout happen, sorry, I think we're going to get this sorted out. All right, there, I just adjusted it. So I want to, on one hand, highlight the positive of gain plan students. This is 1,300 students currently that we have attendance for each day, that it's overall positive. But then if you look at our gain plan students, they're in many different camps. Some of them are in the virtual elementary. Some of them are face-to-face in middle school and in high school or in other elementary schools. And yet again, some of them are virtual in middle school or high school. So think about it for a second. A gain plan student might have had trouble engaging in the spring. And if they're virtual now, that could be a potential trouble spot. So that's especially something I found at the middle school level, and that's why I convene meetings. But it's an area we're going to work on, and I want to bring back positive news later in the fall. So a last thing about game plan, just so you know, there are 196 of those students that are on virtual. So it's not half of them, it's rather about 20% of them, and over 1,000 that are face-to-face. And look at that, virtual gain plan attendance is better in the high school grades. That's an amazing thing because that's really where we're going to be focusing on credit deficiency and things. And that says that our virtual model is really working with game plan students who need that. But I just want to say again, in focusing on the 48 middle school students, that we're going to the student level. And some of those students, we're saying, come on back. It's going to be better for you to be back in the face-to-face environment if the family is okay with that. So, work involving steps. Want to pause for a second. I have 2 things I'm sharing tonight. Attendance was one of them, but I want to pause and ask if there are any questions on attendance.
Maybe just since we do have a new board member and a new student rep, you could explain what the GAIN plan is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Excellent question for both Mr. Mayfield and Mr. Bartling. So, and my apologies, should I have stood a little closer to the microphone, or is my teaching voice okay? All right. So the GAIN plan. In March, right when the pandemic began, one thing I started doing was looking at all of our seniors last year to see who's on track to graduate, who is credit deficient. Because we had 2.5 months to get folks, about 2 months, to get folks ready and to help them complete. So that became an incredible push with the high school. During that time, we realized that at all levels, there were kids that were disengaging. So we did two things. One is we asked the teachers at all levels to count the engagement of students. In other words, we gave them, are they highly engaged? Are they somewhat engaged, medium or middle, moderately engaged? Or are they low engaged, or even are they not engaged at all? And so every teacher gave us that, and we were able to kind of look at that data. During that time, though, we as district leaders were really concerned because we knew there were kids that no matter providing hotspots, no matter all the phone calls and even some other ways of following up with students and families, they just weren't connecting. So what we wanted to do before the end of the school year was have teachers tell us, who are those students? Because we want to know so that we can follow up with them in the fall. And I didn't make a slide for it because I want to share this with the board outside of the meeting, in other words, by email, that the GAIN plan face-to-face students, in other words, the students who struggled in March to May, but now are face-to-face in schools, they're rocking it. Their attendance is amazing. They are engaged, and that's a sign that everything we're doing is working. And so that's an overview of who those GAIN plan students are. And after the end of the school year, the seniors who had GAIN plans were not contacting colleges. They're doing their own thing. And also the pre-K or the HP students, everyone moved up a grade. So what we did is we recreated the map of students to be for their current building. And there still actually are a couple students in pre-K that are continuing the pre-K that are GAIN plan students. So we have GAIN plan students across the board. And again, it was 1,400 when they were identified, and looking at attendance, it's around 1,310. Does that give a good overview?
I saw on one of the charts in the fine print that we're not including skills, success, and OMB. I was just curious, are we going to do that separate, or are we going to be including that attendance data as well?
We will be. I want to meet specifically with those leaders, and I didn't feel comfortable presenting their data because I haven't had that meeting with them yet. I'm monitoring their attendance, but at the same time, there are a lot of different ways that skills and success are taking attendance. And so I've been waiting for building routines to get kind of normalized for the fall.
So if I recall correctly, I got an email from one of the middle schools where my kids attend that they were changing how they were conducting attendance about 2 weeks ago for the virtual students, where they were taking attendance now at the beginning of class and again at the end of class. And there were several different check-ins during that time. Has that improved the interaction, or have we seen that play out in the numbers? Have you followed that closely, that type of change?
I haven't followed week-to-week attendance to know what a student did the previous week to know how that's been helping. That is the reason for my kind of intervention with the middle schools, and really with all of our schools. I think it makes a lot of sense with virtual kids to take attendance after you've taught, because there might be, if you just waited for the first 5 minutes, there might be a kid who's struggling with technology for 5 minutes, and so that would be data, but it wouldn't necessarily be good data. You'd have to go back and change it, and if a teacher didn't have the time or forgot or something. So I think we're aiming for high quality data, and I think it is making a positive impact. Time will tell.
And this is, sorry, just a quick question about the GAIN plan. How were students notified? And also, I know you kind of briefly glossed over it, but just a little bit more in detail of how that works for individual students, like what happens with the students, follow-up meetings, that sort of stuff.
That's a great question, Kendall. And so a couple things to answer that. One is students were not notified. The teacher just selected students that hadn't been engaging. And as for right now, we're having teachers not notify the students. In other words, it's not a program that we're giving everyone a sticker or something, or recognizing them, giving recognition. But instead, we want to make sure that the teacher is intentionally providing supports, because it's kind of like the previous year teacher said, hey, wait, heads up. this student might be really behind and might need some help kind of just getting acclimated. And I think that's where we've seen a lot of the positive work, especially in the face-to-face environment. So as yet, there's not a plan to make this known to the students. It's sort of like just behind the scenes. We want to make sure we're supporting kids.
This may not be a question you can answer now, but in the old days and under normal circumstances, the chronically absent ended up in attendance court. Do we still have that? Will we still have it?
It's not going to be as exciting as this presentation, but we do have attendance court, and we have attendance court even for virtual students. We're taking attendance, and we're being held accountable to that, although the state has given some words that I would say soften that for this year, given that it's a pandemic. But we're still making parents know that they can't have their kid not attend and approve of that or something. So yes, there will be attendance court procedures this year.
I remember when we all just went to virtual school late last spring, or early last spring, as I should say. But we had some discussion in L4L about how some of the kids actually did better in virtual school. They were more comfortable in virtual school. And I was just, I don't know if you can answer this yet either, but I'm just curious about if there was any overlap, like maybe some of these GAIN kids were the kids that were in face-to-face, but then they stayed in virtual school, and that's really getting into the weeds. But I am kind of curious about that because I think it harkens back to some of the overall stressors that kids feel when they're in face-to-face school, academics aside, but just the kind of the social stressors. It's just something I was kind of chewing on, and I'm just curious if there's any way we could look at that, or even if it's on a individual basis with some kids.
Definitely, Ms. Albers. We have a great opportunity coming up this month. When MAP testing is done, we're going to basically be able to see how are GAIN Plan students doing on all of these tests. Also, how are they doing if they're virtual or face-to-face? So that data is coming. It excites me that you asked this because it's really asking the question, which GAIN Plan students are thriving? And I'll say anecdotally, because we haven't had testing data since winter for MAP, but anecdotally, just looking at all the data that I have, I'm seeing lots of students at the elementary level and at the high school level thriving in this environment. In other words, it's better for them. They're not just bearing with it, so to speak. I think it's finally meeting a need that they had for longer than I even think this pandemic, perhaps.
Well, and it goes back to what every student needs, which is what we've all been talking about. It really pushed us to make this turn to provide this service that maybe we thought kids needed, but this really allowed us to make it for those kids. And I love that these kids that maybe wouldn't have thrived in a traditional classroom are going to thrive in virtual school. It just, I think I'm verklempt.
Makes me want to just click my heels. I'm excited about it too.
Mr. Barsonis.
Thank you. I just appreciate the way of changing, and maybe this is the wording and the approach of. It's really not about labeling. It's really not about even the kid saying, "Oh, we identified what the kid is doing right or wrong," but it's more about how can we, as staff, as educators, do more to connect with our kids, to give them what they need, and actually, how do we connect to how they're thriving, versus we identify so and so who's not doing well. And sometimes the emphasis tends to go to the student, but we're really saying, no, how do we connect? And we don't need to let them know if they're part of it or not part of it. It's because it's our job to help them get there. So thank you.
Most welcome. The second part. All right. So I also wanted to give you a deeper dive into the virtual world. So not just attendance, but a couple things about some of the structure. And this will be good information for our new members that are joining us, and we're so excited that you're here. So again, we're going to just briefly talk about the attendance process for virtual. I think we've kind of hammered that at this point. But we want to talk about the numbers and the structure and just kind of give a little bit of the lay of the land. And then that transfer back process, we've been organizing that. So we want to give you kind of a heads up at what's coming down the pike, not too far in the future. So earlier in the, I think as Dr. Brose was calling it back in the old days, but in the summer we asked parents what it was they wanted, and somehow we were quite close to a goal of 1,200, which actually almost nailed it. I think the weekend that applications were due, there was some real apprehension in our community, and those numbers kind of shot up, but we were close. And so if we look at those numbers, the 660 is what makes our virtual elementary school all together. And then the other grade levels broken out between middle and high school are kind of self-contained and worked through each of those schools. If we look at all of those different concerns, and I apologize for breaking them out separately, but that's kind of how the information that parents gave. But we see that the top two areas, medical and safety, really drove things. And really safety was that big one. So again, it's about every student, every day a success. So we wanted to have this as an opportunity for students during this time. If we look at the populations of students, and I apologize here that I didn't give district averages, which would kind of help, but I'll just give them as we go through. So the special education population, 17%, that's approximately at par with the district. It's a little bit higher, but we checked class by class to make sure that it wasn't higher than a federal requirement. You can't have special ed exceed a certain amount in classes, or you need an alternative response. EL students at 4%, obviously that's quite a bit, that's lower than our district, and that's good. We had some families that signed up for virtual that after they found out, number one, kind of how rigorous it is, but number two, how difficult it is to learn a second language via computer. There were some families that just said, hey, we tried, but we want to come back. And so principals work with those students on a case-by-case basis. And higher ability learners, we, as Ms. Albers was asking before, we have a number of students in the Thrive environment that for them virtual is an opportunity. It's not a requirement, it's not something that they have to do, it's rather something that they are excited about too. Not only the higher ability learners, that's what HAL stands for, in case anyone didn't know, but a lot of our students are in that category. And the ethnicity picture is more predominantly Hispanic students, and that was mostly represented by our last week before we closed the application. That percentage kind of shot up a lot. I'm excited that there's students from every ethnicity, because that to me says this isn't only open for one group, it's open for everybody. Now here's something about the elementary school. We wanted to look at class size numbers. And in GIPS, we want to make sure our kindergarten and our first grade classes are smaller. And so the average size in the elementary school is 18 to 19 for the virtual classes. That is very similar to the face-to-face environment, a little bit larger, but how do I say it? You might not feel crowded in a virtual class quite like you'd feel crowded in a face-to-face. So you notice for the upper grade levels in the elementary, that's a little bit higher, but again, those are manageable numbers. And the teachers, I'm excited. I didn't tell you it's coming in a slide. Actually, I'll wait, talk about engagement in a second. Just to mention it, the middle school and the high school are using either a blended model or they're having kids in all virtual classes that are in a class together with a teacher who was often teaching on site. And earlier in the presentation about quarantine and things like that, those students are not served in a virtual way. In other words, if a student has to go on a 14-day or whatever the number of days is quarantine, those students would be served through their regular teacher and through sort of a distance learning model. All right. I think we kind of hit the gain plan virtual, but I just wanted to highlight one thing. The widest gap currently between gain plan students and the other virtual students is in 2nd and 4th grade. And those are early learning, those are literacy years. And so even though earlier in my presentation I highlighted my big concern about middle school, I'm kind of just keeping my watch for elementary students who have game plans. So this is an area of research that will go on. Map data will tell us a lot. So as I was talking earlier about engagement, this is the rubric. The virtual elementary school teachers made this rubric with us. We'd given them a sample that was used during the spring, and we also had one from the summer school teachers. And so I apologize if the text is a little bit small, but we just came upon those 4 categories: not participating, partially met targets of the class, met targets or exceed targets. And you can see right now that 83% of our students are meeting or exceeding their targets. That's in the virtual elementary. We're not taking engagement in the middle school and high school because they're in regular classes. So grades will suffice as their meeting of learning standards. So engagement data, I was just communicating with the teachers yesterday and today about that. And I'm just excited that they're doing it once a week, giving us what's the engagement of students. And then that way that gives them, as well as Ms. Flower, a bit of a plan for which students do I need to help support this week. So the last thing I want to talk about is the transfer back process. We've organized a reach out to parents and also a survey form similar to the way that they applied for virtual. It's to apply to either come back. We might also have a small number of folks that, for whatever reason, the safety and medical often, they might decide that they think they need to spend the second trimester in the virtual. So it's going to be towards the 20th, so towards the end of September opening, and then closing at about October 5th. And then the schools will have the time of October to build schedules and communicate with families. And we did say over the course of time that everything is staff available. I'll just say this, having seen what it took to make the virtual, there's going to be a lot of moving around. I mean, we're going to have to, there might be some teachers in the virtual that are fully back in the face-to-face environment. So we're going to give as much time and support to schools to kind of build those schedules. But that's what the transfer back process will look like. So I'll pause. I don't have a third part. So good to see you. Are there any questions about sort of the structure of virtual, and also Mr. Bartling and Mr. Mayfield, if there are any of the things that I said that kind of didn't make sense or something, because that might build on something we've discussed here previously, please ask.
Dr. Brose.
You know, a year ago, or even more than a year ago, Dr. Grover talked to us about having someone in the district who could help evaluate our success at whatever it is we're doing. And I applaud her for having that vision, and I applaud you for doing what you're doing to help us better understand where we are in terms of attendance. It's been a goal of ours, and to know that we've got somebody on staff who knows how to do the research, for me, is really gratifying. So thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Grover.
Thank you. It's a huge honor.
Mrs. Gordemaker.
I echo Dr. Rose again. It's okay. I admire you for pivoting, and I hate that word. Your sort of intended job title into this whole new world. So I just have to say, I think that's great that you've transitioned your role into this whole different but kind of the same thing.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Bartling.
So this is just a quick question, and probably, so my question is, with engagement with virtual school, that is measured, with participating in assignments and stuff, and of course attendance is a big part of that as well. How does and this could just be off the top of your head, no numbers needed, but how does engagement in person, turning in assignments, participating in class look like compared to virtual? You don't have any numbers on that probably, but just quick question.
Mr. Bartling, that's a great question. And I don't have the numbers for that because we aren't asking that question of our face-to-face teachers. but I want to chew on that. I want to think about that because it's a really important question. And you've probably heard before that there's no such thing as a bad question. I really appreciate you for asking that. And I'm going to spend some time thinking about how could we measure some engagement. Maybe it's a statistic that we could gain class level from face-to-face teachers, just to get kind of a litmus test. How are your classes engaging? And some kind of a rubric. But that way we could have a way to compare. So I'll think about that, and we'll chew on that here at the office and try to come up with some answers.
Yeah, I get that. Looking at those numbers on engaging versus not engaging, part of me kind of thought that was a little bit off, but at the same time, comparing that to in person, of course, it's going to be a totally different thing because we're just looking at one aspect of our schooling versus the whole schooling as a whole. So thank you so much.
One thing I'd just add, by the way, I know attendance is not just the only part of engaging, but it's a big part. And so one way we thought about gathering engagement data for face-to-face students was really studying in on attendance data as well as tardies and other things. But just what does that look like? Because kids show up to learn. That's something that requires effort and engagement. So I know we could go deeper than that, but that was one thing that I want to mine the data we have as well. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Wolf?
Hi. I just had a question. So in my day job, I do a lot of trying to connect students, like if they're not coming to class or whatnot, or they're not logging in. And so I was just curious, when it comes to not participating or partially met, what are those next steps to help further that engagement? And if you had any wonderful suggestions for me, that would be great.
Well, our esteemed governor always says, look for the root cause. So that's something you can find from the direct way of asking students, but you can also ask the indirect. In other words, what's been getting your attention this week? An open-ended question, but just trying to hear what's steering a kid's heart and what's potentially a challenge that you might not have seen. So again, another question that I'll have to spend some time thinking on. But we're working with those kids that are partly engaged because we want them to meet their targets too.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Brown?
Awesome presentations, great numbers. I know it took a pandemic to get to this point, but here's a question. So those kids, especially the ones that are in the GAIN plan and are showing vast improvements, maybe in the virtual classroom, for instance, is that something that the district is going to be looking at in the long term if we're not in the pandemic? Earmarking those kids now that are doing better, is that something that it's a track that we may want to keep in play? Just a question.
Absolutely. This game plan has been gaining a lot of momentum. We're very excited about what it offers. And so when Dr. Dahl talked about being able, now we're really working with the teachers to help them understand that transition of the students from back in the spring until now, and really how does that tie into their multi-tiered support systems that they already have, that we're using within the school district. We have also talked about a little bit about some app development, because we would love to be able to have some real-time interaction, because each kid is prescribed a certain type of intervention. Where education has fallen short in the past, we have all these things that we're saying we're doing for kids, but we don't monitor the implementation along the way to see if it's having the desired impact. And that's where we really want to take this. So we're continuing to work on it, and we do see this as part of getting us to the part of the strategic plan where we have indicated that every child will have a personalized plan, an individualized, personalized plan, and that is in our strategic plan. Again, we struggled with that before the pandemic. We were like, how will we ever get to having a plan for every kid? This has really given us an insight and a platform to getting there. So definitely we should be well ahead of progress now when we look forward to next year.
Okay. Dr. Brose?
Speaking of the virtual classroom then, are we getting any feedback from teachers about how they are acclimating to it and how they feel about it, how they feel about having their class? It's just, if we are gonna look at this in the future, which it's kind of a neat idea, then I'd really like to know how the staff's responding, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
I have a bigger pulse on the elementary, and they're excited. They just really, all of the feedback is positive, not the intentionally looked for feedback, so to speak, but they're just excited. And they're excited to have their kids, and their kids are excited to be there. The middle school and high school, I think it's an area for more research. We have some teachers that have one foot in each world, so to speak. So it's sort of, how's this class going? It's sort of in a teacher's mind. There might be thoughts about both the face-to-face aspects they have and the virtual. As we come towards the trimester, I think it might be important for us to gather that feedback, because the moment kids go back, we lose that window. One thing I'd add, we have amazing panorama data coming out this month, and for all of our staff who fill that out, we'll be able to cross-reference, and something I can do is actually look at percentage of virtual taught by a teacher to help try to find that difference between some of the secondary teachers. But we'll be able to really mine that data. Thank you for bringing that point up. I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Mrs. Zink.
This is just food for thought, but I've been working from home since March, and I manage a team of about 25 people that are all working from home. And just as kids, some work better face-to-face than virtual, adults are exactly the same. So I think as we prepare our workforce, I think that this is going to really elevate their ability to work, you know, as a hybrid, or they're going to understand the nuances of how to play the game, you know, and how to be successful and productive and all of those things. And I think a lot of companies will end up going to that hybrid, where you might be in the office a couple days a week and you're at home the others. And I really think that this is going to help our soon-to-be adults really work well in our ever-changing world.
You're absolutely right, Ms. Hank, and I think it's amazing to think about this from the student's point of view. And not tonight, Kendall, we're not going to put you on the spot. But I really want to just think for a student to experience virtual education and for that to happen for multiple years, because we're not taking the keys away after the transition, because we know there are families that want to stay in this. But I think that really prepares kids for the future, that has the future work world that has lots of these kind of structures. So we're excited, and maybe we'll give you a month to get used to this, but maybe in the next presentation we'll be asking you questions, not just letting you ask us questions.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So now that took care of agenda item 9.2 and 9.3, and so we're moving to 9.4, the Early Childhood Learning Center at O'Connor Learning Center naming gift agreement. Mr. Harden.
Good evening again. Just going to navigate to all right, well, that's up there. So this naming gift agreement is based on what you as a board have done in the past for naming gifts. Probably most recently and fresh in your mind is Memorial Stadium. And so we are trying to reach out to folks to help us with our early childhood education program at the O'Connor Learning Center. And so in order for us to, I guess, for lack of a better term, solicit those donations, we need to have a naming agreement. We talked about this at the F&F committee meeting, and they recommended that we bring it forward to you as a board for consideration. I believe it's both information and action this evening. So it's a standard layout, just like we used, as I mentioned, with the Memorial Stadium. There's no specific area at this time in the building that we've identified. Probably the most likely would be the gym, which is a rather large indoor gym area, or the outside play area, are the most likely candidates. It's unlikely someone would want to do a naming gift and say, well, name that classroom, kind of thing, versus the more common areas. And those are the two biggest. The only other one that I can think of is there is a very large meeting room in that facility, and that could be something that people might be interested in. So if I had to guess, again, there's no designs on anything at this point specifically. Those would be the three most likely that would come up that we would engage folks in that might be interested in that. So with that, I would conclude my comments.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? It does not look like it, so we will move on to 9.5, which is the CPM Core Connections Resources. Dr. Palmer.
Hello, thank you. Back in the spring, it seems like it's been a while ago, we had come to you with a request to purchase a new adoption for our middle school math. Of course, a lot has happened since that adoption. So we recognized, along with some other needs that occurred when we didn't get resources back from students, which is fine, that we were going to be in need of some additional materials. And so you can see in the needs analysis that given the COVID situation, we want to make sure that we have ebooks available to every single student in the event that we need to go to virtual or go into remote learning. Right now, we currently don't have that access, and so we also have higher numbers in some of the grade levels than we anticipated, and so we wanted to make sure that we accommodated for that. So you can see that the proposed action is to purchase CPM's Core Connections. We need a few new hardback books for some new students, but we need ebooks for all students. And so in order to do that, we're asking you to approve the funds of $46,750 that will be paid for through L4L budget to make sure that we can accommodate that need. This is presented to you as info and action so that we can make sure and get the books ordered and get them in the hands of our students.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, doesn't look like it. Thank you. 9.6 is the Kidwell Mattel hardware proposals. Mr. Gerhardt.
Good evening. The proposal we have before you tonight is actually in regards to the telephone systems. I told the Finance Committee the only thing worse than paying for telephone systems is parking lots, and we've run into an issue where the systems that we've used for the longest time in the district is the Iwatsu product, and they've actually pulled out of the North American market starting about a month after we finished our last installation at Star Elementary School. So we were in a position where the support was limited for a period of time, and it's virtually non-existent at this point. They will support you, and you will pay them very well for it, but they won't even guarantee that they can help you get things back up and running. And so we're put into a bind where the high school and the Neal Administration Building are really the central hubs for how we've structured our telephony systems in the district. And so the concept is that if we lose the Neal Admin Building, we lose dial-in service to most of the elementary schools. If we lose the high school, we lose dial-in service to most of the middle schools, actually all the middle schools. But by doing this, we've eliminated those two buildings as points of failure, and then it makes each other building stand independently on its own, so that we can address those issues if we have independent issues with a particular building that might still be running an old system. So the two proposals here for the amounts listed there in both of those documents, essentially close to $187,000 for both facilities, would be to replace both the systems and all the telephones, and there may be some additional costs incurred as listed in the needs analysis in regards to switching infrastructure, because at the same time, you know, the high school is still functioning as a digital and an analog system, and so this would be the point where we move that up to a voice over IP system. The Neal Administration Building is on a VoIP system, and it's one of the newer chassis that we have of the Iwatsu. So in both of those cases, we'll be removing them and shelving those systems for parts and spares, essentially, to help support the rest of the systems until we can work through the process to replace them all. Another advantage to this is, you know, we are currently a virtual elementary school, and hopefully we don't become a virtual school district anytime soon, but should that happen, we do have some opportunities with the new systems to do soft phone-based things, so we can still have extensions going to people's computers, and we can still offer some additional services that we can't do right now with the Iwatsu systems as well. So with that, I guess I will ask for any questions.
All right, Dr. Brose.
I didn't think to ask this during finance and facilities, but then will there be in the future any kind of equipment demands at the middle schools and the high schools? We'll put the hubs in at the senior high and here, but then what happens at those other buildings?
Yeah, so every facility has its own phone, core infrastructure for the phone system. Eventually, we will replace all of those as well. So this is part of a larger scope of projects. This is just kind of the linchpin because of, I mean, to be frank, we had a bunch of challenges right as school was starting this year, and we lost, often enough that it was causing a problem. We lost inward dialing, and we couldn't support elementary parents calling in and things like that, and it was an Iwatsu related issue, and so it just really sealed the need to make the move and unfortunately make the expenditure. But these expenses will be coming out of Mr. Petch's budget, so that makes me pretty happy, but it will be general fund dollars as well.
Mrs. Zink.
I didn't think about this at facilities and finance either, but is all of the wiring and all of that good? Or is there rewiring that will occur in all of these buildings as well?
Well,
and is that included in this cost?
Well, good is relative. No, we will have some wiring challenges. There are some devices we can use that actually allow us to ride the signals that we need over maybe some less than stellar copper lines, and so we can. There should be enough in place that we can do this without having a major expense. Anything that does come up should be relatively minimal related to the overall cost. But yeah, there are some wiring challenges. I'm actually working with Mr. Harden, and we're going to look at some facilities as an ongoing effort to see what the infrastructure looks like in those. That is something long-term, though, that we can look at potentially funding through E-rate Category 2 dollars, so it would be something where we would pay, just a small portion of the cost to rewire those as part of the federal program there. It's 20 cents on the dollar, I believe, is what we typically get. So.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right, we appreciate that. Thank you. 9.7 is the Teammates Memorandum of Understanding. Mrs. Worthington.
You. This is on the agenda for information and action tonight. It's a fairly simple document, and it needs to be signed in order to allow teammates to start meeting this year. And that's an important program for us, so we don't want to hold that up. As you can see at the top of it, their preference is still to meet face-to-face, and at this point, we just aren't comfortable with that. So they've developed a platform to allow for virtual meetings. I did talk to our IT department. They're comfortable with it. It has security features, and parents will need to sign a permission form. So we were comfortable with that as well. I did talk to Finance and Facilities Committee about it, and so they've had a chance to review it. So I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, are there any questions? No? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
9.8 is the construction update. Mr. Petch.
Thanks, Mrs. Hinkle. The good thing is I don't really have much to update on the stadium. We've got our C of O for the east side. We're presently in the punch list mode, and that'll keep us busy for a couple more months. It's a very complicated project, whether you talk about the scoreboard and all those controls that occur up in the press box and other moving parts, but it's coming along pretty well. We have a nice finished product, waiting for the next project. So with that, I'll conclude my report and I'll answer any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? I would just say it looks fabulous. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, 9.9 is our student representative report. Mr. Bartling.
Thank you. And once again, thank you to the members of the board so much for this opportunity. I feel that having student representation, not only in local, but in all forms of government is very, very important. And I really do appreciate the efforts that you guys are taking in order to incorporate us in decisions and hearing our voice. So I figured I'd start off with just a student perspective at the start of school. The academies at Grand Island Senior High are back in business. We are very glad to be back in class. It's great to see each other's eyebrows. You can't see the smiles, but getting to engage and interact with friends and being back in that environment is very, very important. The general consensus with students I've talked to, protocols are working. They're not intrusive to the class experience. We don't feel any change in the quality of education, and they contribute to a feeling of care and attention to detail that is very welcome in the current climate. We really do appreciate, and it does feel like we are being cared for, especially in a time of global crisis. So we just wanted to say thank you for that. Students I've talked to who are in the virtual system as well, they are satisfied with their experience. They feel there's no major change in the quality of education. They feel that they're still getting a rich high school experience, and they're very glad to have that safety of learning from home and contributing with the convenience of online school. All of that just comes together to make a very positive experience on their behalf. Moving into academics, the biggest thing that I've noticed this year, and a lot of my peers, especially in the AP side of things, so before this year, we had to choose between AP and dual credit courses at Grand Island Senior High. You could technically take both, but you'd be sitting in the same class practically for 2 periods of a day when you're getting the same education in both. Over the summer, the district announced that was changing. Wayne State College credit was being offered for all students taking AP courses. And that was at no extra cost incurred to the students. So personally, I studied for my AP tests. I did well on them. I felt really good about them. But I know a lot of my fellow peers were very concerned about the pressure of just a single test determining whether or not you get college credit. So just having this opportunity is very, very important. All of the colleges I've considered applying to and actually have at this point have said that they'd accept all of the dual credit. It's not just in-state colleges as well. So these are opportunities that will work for students no matter if they stay in Nebraska or if they go on to out-of-state opportunities. So the Academy of Business and Communication, which I'm a part of, their multimedia production pathway has had a very couple of interesting weeks. There's an article in it in the Independent the other day about our opportunities with the new Jack Jeffries Memorial Scoreboard Visual Board. There's that whole operation with operating the graphics throughout the game, commercials, and then with Strive and live streaming events for those who are not able to make it in person. We actually have a student team running that as well. I'm glad to say that for the varsity and freshman games, I was up in the box running the cameras. And I can tell you from my experience and talking with other people and talking with the Daktronics folks about other opportunities across the nation, Grand Island Senior High is the only high school with something like this. If we're talking about unique experiences and things that will pay off in the future, this is something that no other district has. And the nice thing about that is universities that use their systems as well, I believe UNL is one and a couple other local colleges, they use Daktronic systems as well, and the company has promised to pass our information on as well. So should we choose to go to UNL, their teams will have knowledge that we are educated and we can operate those that equipment competently. So moving on into activities, something you guys should all know about me is I'm a band kid. So if my reports are skewed that way, don't think I'm ignoring everybody else. It's just my personal experience. We're off to a great start this year. We had some very unique challenges. Band itself poses some unique challenges in the times of masks, distancing, and more. But we have persevered. We have powered through band camp, where that was very successful. And we completed our first halftime performance at the varsity football game. Personally, it felt very, very good to be back on that field, performing for an audience and showing everybody what we've been working hard on. There is a general sentiment of disappointment when it comes to how this season is played out and how competitions are canceled, and there's stuff that goes with that, but every single member of that band, every staff member, all understands that the logistics of handling 170 kids, trying to get them traveled places safely, trying to get that all happen, is a very, very difficult challenge. And we totally understand that all the decisions that have been made. Choir and vocals are off to a great start as well. The biggest change that they've noticed and I've noticed is singing with a mask on. You know, sometimes you're in between phrases and you breathe in and you get a face full of mask, yeah. But once you make that adjustment to your singing style and the way you do everything, there isn't much of a change when it comes to performing, and all the ensembles that I've had the pleasure of listening to are sounding great so far. On the topic of athletics, varsity football had their first game on the 4th. They scored a victory over Pius X in the brand new Memorial Stadium with a score of 24-7. Go Islanders. Their next game will take place on the 18th. That'll be against Fremont. Before that, freshman football had their first couple of games. The first on the 3rd, narrowly losing to Lincoln Southeast. They did beat Lincoln East very handily, 38-6 on the September 8th. Gish Volleyball is also off to a start this year, currently 0-3 for the season, but their next game is the 12th, and they'll have several more leading up to the next meeting. And Gish Softball is off as well, currently 2-14 for the season. They have a game tonight, I believe, probably as we're speaking, as well as several others that are going to continue on through the season, and I hope to continue delivering reports on athletics. And then this comes to a part of my report that I'd like to think is unique and that I hope to bring every year, not every year, my bad, every month to our meetings. So I intend to leave a little bit at the end of my report to give students a direct line to you. I do a very good job. Sorry, I don't mean to float my own boat, but I think I do a good enough job on conveying the generals and getting, you know, a general idea of how things are going at the school, but people are good at articulating their own opinions themselves. And so I want to give an opportunity for students to voice those concerns and those thoughts to you guys. The student perspective from this month comes from senior in the Academy of Business and Communication. And they write, Board of Education, I believe that the district is doing a great job when it comes to enforcing masks. There have been few, if any, incidents in classrooms and events where any reminders have had to be made. Recently at the varsity football game, there's the opportunity for 100 seniors to show up and show their spirit, and they're very grateful for that. They just wanted to pass that on. There was the question of not all 100 students showing up. I know this is a pretty local concern, but not all 100 students who showed up, or who signed up to show up, did show up, which raises the question, are there any opportunities for more students to attend athletic games? And considering that we're getting closer and closer to phase 4, I know there's limitations with the model, but students are they're wanting to get out and show their spirit while still remaining safe. And I think that's shown in all of our, in band, we always have our masks on. All of our students are doing very, very well with those protocols, and they just want to know if there's any more opportunities for that. And that's something that the pandemic team can reevaluate, or something else can happen, but they just wanted to let you know that they are looking to see if there can be any more opportunities for students at events, but it's not really too important. but, well, it is important, sorry. But they understand if that's a pretty firm topic. I would like to open up to any questions that any board members may have.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I was just kind of wondering what your trajectory through the district was, your elementary, middle, high school.
Sure. So I grew up as a Newell Knight, K through 5. I was at Newell Elementary, and I actually took a little bit of an odd path. I went up to Westridge for my middle school career, and now I'm at Grand Island Senior High. At Grand Island Senior High, it's been a little bit of a curvy road with the academies. I take some courses with engineering and technology in the aviation pathway. That's actually been a really exciting experience. Most of it was last year, and then with the multimedia production pathway, doing a lot of content creation and now operating scoreboards and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. That was an awesome report, and we're very happy to hear about the scoreboard opportunities and so forth. And then I'm sure Dr. Grover, I saw her writing down the request. I think it's everybody's desire to give all of you as close to normal as possible a senior year, and we recognize that. And so just know that our hearts break when we do, because we know how fun it is to be a senior. We do remember even more, though we're old. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. And welcome, welcome. All right, 9.10 is the superintendent report. Dr. Grover.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Bartlin to the team. He also is on my student advisory team. We actually went out and recruited him, if I remember that correctly, like, come on, get on the team. And so I know he'll be an awesome addition, as well as welcome Mr. Mayfield. And so I really don't have any additional items other than what was discussed tonight, except for the acknowledgement. Today is Dr. Dexter's birthday, so I just want to take a point of privilege to give her a little shout out there. She's celebrating her birthday with us.
We feel honored that you were here. Happy, happy birthday. You deserve a great birthday, so I hope you can go home and do something relaxing or fun. All right. If everybody's okay with it, I think we'll take a quick 5-minute break. I've seen a lot of people get up. I know. started.
I guess the answer is no.
All right, and we're going to start with action item 10.1, the CPM Core Connections Resources, Dr. Palmer. And you presented to us earlier. Is there anything else that you want to share with us? No.
Have any additional questions? I don't have anything else to share.
All right. Did anybody think of any questions? Any additional ones? All right. Please vote. And Tim, you may have to kind of go clear over there, or you can ask. And then once you move it to where you want to, you probably don't have to move it again. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think so. So now that we know where everybody's sitting, maybe next time we can, I don't know how you do it, but we can figure it out, so. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Leave it to the new administrative assistant to remind me. I thought I was forgetting something. Is there a motion? Mr. Barsonis.
Make the motion to approve the CPM Core Connection Resources as presented.
And is there a second? Second, was that Mrs. Albers? All right, any discussion? Now please vote. You've already done that, but sorry. I don't know what I was doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right. 10.2 is the Kidwell Mattel hardware proposals, Mr. Gerhart. Anything additional you need to share with us? Okay, any questions that anybody has? Need a motion? Dr. Bros.
I move that we approve the quote from Kidwell for the new Mitel systems and hardware at the Neal Administration Building and Grand Island Senior High School as presented.
And is there a second? Second, Mr. Barsonis, any discussion? Please vote.
Thank you.
All right. 10.3 is the teammates memorandum of understanding, Mrs. Worthington. Anything additional? Anybody have any questions for Mrs. Worthington? All right, I need a motion. Mr. Barsonis.
Make a motion to approve the virtual match meeting MOU with teammates.
And is there a second? Second, Mrs. Inc. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay, 10.4 is the proposed budget fiscal year 2020, 2021. Mr. Harden.
Just a very, very quick review. Of course, a week ago, we had our budget workshop. We had a public hearing. No one appeared from the public to make any comments. So I would submit the budget as presented to you for your consideration for approval.
All right, and do I have a motion? Mr. Brown.
I would move to approve the proposed fiscal year 2020, 2021 budget.
And
as
is there a
presented.
second? Second, Ms. Wolf. Any discussion? Please vote. And just, we'll give him a minute. All right.
Oh, wait a minute, that one says Julie.
Hold on, I'll change it.
Okay. 10.5 is the proposed tax levy fiscal year 2020, 2021. Mr. Harden.
Again, last week we met, did our workshop, had a hearing about the levy. No one from the public came and made any comments. The levy is going down all of 1 cent and 3 tenths, so 0.013 cents. So with that, I would submit that the property tax resolution be read into the public record.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I've done this a few times. So, whereas the Board of Education, Hall County School District 2, also known as the Grand Island Public Schools, is obligated to pay ongoing and ever-increasing expenditures to operate the school district. And whereas the board has determined that it needs to collect more property tax than it collects in the prior year, And whereas on Thursday, August 25th, 2020, the board published notice in the newspaper of general circulation, and whereas said notice was published at least 5 days prior to the board's special meeting, and whereas since notice included the required items as specified in Nebraska Revised Statute 77-1601.02, and therefore as it be resolved by the Board of Education of Hall County School District Number 2, also known as Grand Island Public Schools, that the board has considered and approved the property tax request for the following year as follows. The amount of the property tax request is general fund, $36,663,407. Bond fund number 4, $2,832,803. Bond fund number 5, $3,414,481.80. Total bond fund, $6,247,284.80. Special building fund of $352,549, and the QC Puff, $1,057,615. Total of all funds, $44,320,855.80. The total assessed value of property differs from last year's total assessed value by a 5.2% increase, or $174,360,631. The tax rate, which would levy the same amount of property tax of last year when multiplied by the new total assessed value of the property, would be $1.205325 per $100 of assessed value. The Grand Island Public School District proposes to adopt a proposed tax request that would cause its tax rate to be $1.257807 per $100 of assessed value. Based on the proposed property tax request and change in other revenue, the total operating budget of Grand Island Public Schools will reduce last year's by a 34% decrease.
All right, is there a second? Second. Second, Mr. Barsonas. Any discussion? Please vote. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the committee reports. The first one is 11.1, Finance and Facilities. Mr. Brown.
Again, reporting from the minutes from our September 1st meeting, we did talk about telephones, imagine that. We also talked about the reclassification of a network system engineer for Mr. Gerhardt. His department obviously has been under stress well before March, and March didn't help. With the online learning and whatnot, this position has been one we filled, and we lose that kind of staff, mostly to Hastings College, but we're not going to get there. We're not going to complain too much. So this reclassification would hopefully up that requirement, and hopefully we'll get someone that's very qualified and that we can keep them. On nutrition services, we had an update from Ms. Spellman. That things are running very smoothly for the most part. We do have breakfast, lunch pickup at door number 18 at Neal Administration Building for those that are on our online learning. We did talk about some of the items that we were already approved, the CPM materials. We did discuss the depreciation special building fund, general fund, and the bond fund. We got an update on the federal programs. Again, more and more information being compiled to spend the federal dollars in a timely manner. We did have an update on the MPERS order to pay retirement on officials. We've had this thing go around for the last few years. And so for the officials that we hire, which we consider contractors, but if they happen to work for a school district as well, we have to hold back retirement. So, so says they. We had an update from Mr. Harden on the GFOA best practices, both on annual review of the investments and debt policy, the initial review of the fund balance policy. Those all, again, will be coming forward with more review. We definitely reviewed the MOU for teammates. Again, kind of a different format for them, but it's something that we just have to do. We also reviewed the annual purchase limits, which we are no increase in going from last year. There is some upcoming exciting news on the early childhood education, but I'm not going to spill the beans. So knowing that there is exciting news coming there. We did talk about a small change order on the Memorial Stadium and heard Mr. Petch's construction update on the projects. With that, I conclude my report, and I think the next meeting will be Tuesday, September 29th at 7:30.
All right, thank you very much. 11.2, Leading for Learning Committee, Lisa Albers.
We had our meeting virtually September 1st. We had an update from Mr. Phillips regarding what was going on new and exciting at the academies of Grand Island Senior High. They are off to a great start. The Academy of Freshman Exploration has 630 students. The Business Communication Academy is growing. They are working to develop an FFA chapter. Students and staff participated in a 3-day training on how to run the new scoreboard, and we'll be running it during school events, as we heard about from Kendall. We have a new stock ticker installed and will be up and running soon. I might want to see that. That's kind of interesting.
It's actually on Twitter today.
Oh, that's so completely cool. Okay. The Academy of Law and Public Safety is partnering with Central Community College with an opportunity to earn 6 credits this year. Mr. Phillips also updated the committee on the integrated science off-site classes at CPI and Wyandotte. And this helped address the space, travel, and class size needs at GISH. Mr. Weichman provided an overview of Edmentum from the student and teacher view. Teachers assigned to support students are making daily touch points to monitor progress and provide student support as needed. Dr. Tom Jack provided information on the CPM instructional materials funding request. And Dr. Tom Jack also provided information regarding the start of this year's professional learning. All of our teachers, including substitutes and some paraprofessionals, engaged in remote instruction, professional learning before school started. Feedback from teachers was very, very positive, and they're going to continue training for teachers that are teaching students virtually. Dr. Dahl provided an update to attendance that we heard about, and Dr. Palmer concluded the meeting with an update on the assessment calendar and Thriving Minds school data. Our next meeting is October 6th at 4 o'clock.
All right, thank you very much. 11.3, Personnel Committee.
I'm back.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
I'll be reporting minutes from the September 3rd meeting. We did get a presentation by Mr. Gerhardt again about the reclassification of the network and systems administrator to the network systems engineer. That hopefully that increased responsibility and up to the education requirement and somewhat of a budget increase for that position would it be able to keep that position a little longer than we had. With the current suspension of middle school athletics and activities, staff who were assigned those coaching and sponsorship responsibilities were given the opportunity to accept reassignment to other activities throughout the district as needed in return for their current ES contract to continue to be paid. So far we have 80 of 103 contracts that have been returned for signature. So we have 80 people that just looking for something else to do, which is great. We'll find something for them. Strategic planning call with DMG took place on August 18th to begin planning on the strategic budgeting and then the professional development. We're now on the process of creating a timeline for that work. We do have the majority of this work will be completed in the fall of 2020. Last month, we reported that the development of the Step-In program to provide students and families with academic supports in the event that the district would need to transition to either a select or remote model. That's a downer. You have to plan for it. This program is ready to pilot in a virtual elementary school so that we are ready to implement if necessary and hopefully not. The committee also reviewed the report of evaluations for the 1920 school year. For staff updates, the district is recruiting both an elementary first grade teacher and a middle school education consultant. In the classified staff, currently always seems to be recruiting for paras, custodians, the network administrator, attendance monitor, and LPN. And the administrative staff has already screened the director of strategic communication, and I'm sure we'll be hearing about that sometime soon. Also, the recruiting for the accountant for the business office as well. All that said, that concludes my report. Our next meeting would be October 6th at 7 a.m.
All right, there is no policy committee report this month. 11.5 is the Public Relations and Partnership Development Committee. Dr. Brose.
Thank you. Public Relations and Partnership Development met on Thursday, September 3rd. We always begin the meeting with discussion about what is the beat on the street, and the beat on the street that day happened to be discussion about activities and athletics. Dr. Grover overviewed the beginning of the school year and the first 3 weeks that we had behind us at that point, or almost behind us. Mrs. Worthington talked about the new dashboard, which listed positive COVID cases and the number of quarantined individuals in GIPS. You saw part of that this evening. We also talked about what's the district responsibility for notification of individuals affected by COVID activity within the district. We're working through different ways to communicate with parents and the community about COVID. We also discussed some race issues at the senior high and talked about how we could address those within the school district and the community. The district is continuing to communicate about plans and continues to evaluate GIPS Foundation strategic planning. The district is continuing to communicate about plans and continues to evaluate sports and activities at Grand Island Senior High and spectator participation. And we talked at the end about the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation is beginning a process for strategic planning, and they are including district representation. You may have been contacted by them for input. Our next meeting is Thursday, November 5th at 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you very much. 11.6 is the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation report. Mrs. Albers.
The foundation staff and board met with organizations operating under their umbrella on Monday, August 24th to review policies and procedures and build relationships. The organizations that currently operate under GIPS Foundation's umbrella include booster clubs, special project clubs, and other ongoing philanthropy-funded ventures. The foundation opened the online classroom mini grant application. This round of grants will be for projects that will benefit students after November or during the spring or summer of 2021. Classroom grant requests will be accepted through September 30th. The foundation awards mini grants in 2 rounds on an annual basis. Mini grants are designed to fund educational opportunities for students that are not available through the school district's general budget. The foundation's going to be undergoing their annual audit next week. The foundation board hears a report each month of the opportunities or emergencies being funded with various foundation funds. As school has started, these requests have picked up and the stories would put a lump in anyone's throat. We are grateful to be able to help out. I know that they talk about being able to pay rent for students, paying electric bills, paying a phone bill, just fairly basic needs. It's a fund that's being used in the best way. Also, a thank you to all GIPS staff for their resilience and perseverance. The foundation board, along with representatives of the Board of Education and district staff, will be doing the strategic planning process in September, and it should take 4 to 6 months. And then at their board meeting next week, the GIPS Foundation Board will review and accept their annual operating and unrestricted budget.
Okay. Thank you. 11.7 is the governance committee. We met on August 10th, and I actually reported on that at our last meeting. But then we had a special meeting on August 17th as well, where we discussed the process for filling the board vacancy. And so you all participated in that and know how that went. So our next meeting is Monday night at 5:30 p.m. 11.8 is GNSA Legislative Committee report, Mr. Harden.
Report ever. I have nothing to report other than we did get the official list of meetings for next year. I believe I sent that out to everybody. I believe our next meeting is in the November school board's meeting in Omaha.
Yes. Thank you. Right, we're going to talk about that next. 11.9 is the NASB monthly update. First of all, Mr. Barsonis let me know that he has a new role on a special committee for NASB, correct? And so maybe you can share that with us.
Just, yeah, yeah. It's been such a month. No, I was invited, and I missed the initial email, but it's the NASB Equity Collaborative, and it has board members from Nebraska, and I happen to know Minor Hernandez, who is in Schuyler, Nebraska. So I'm just excited to see and just grow, and just as a push of Ms. Schutz not being here. I mean, I don't know how she did it, and I figured if she could do it, I got to step into a little bit more roles, and it's just good to have that opportunity. So looking forward to it.
So what we'll do in future months, when you have, like if you've met and you have something to report, we'll let you share here if you're okay with that. Because I think we'd be very interested in hearing what they're doing on the state level. So thank you for representing us and being a part of that. All right, and so as Terry mentioned, the state conference, we got an email today that it's going to be a hybrid option. 500 people can attend in person, and then everybody else can attend virtually. And so we will have to make a decision as to how we want to participate as a board. And it could probably be, some of us do hybrid, some of us do it in person too. But it sounds like we'll have to make that decision fairly quickly because we'll need to get hotel rooms booked and stuff. So please think about what you think you want to do, if you want to be there in person or if you want to do it virtually, and then let us know. We'll probably reach back out to you, but probably a quick response on that. And then you should have also all received, and Tim, obviously you didn't, so we'll make sure you get it, but the email video from the NASB, that's how they're doing their monthly updates now. Always good information, so hopefully you take a time to look at that. Next week, there is a National School Board Association School Safety Virtual Conference, the 16th and 17th. And I know I've signed up for it. Did you sign up for that one too, Mrs. Albers? Did anybody else sign up for it? We'll share details with you. And then, of course, September 22nd through the 24th is the CUBE National Conference. And then September 30th is the area membership meeting for the Nebraska school boards. Again, it's virtual as opposed to being in person. If we do want to watch this as a group, because I think our award will be announced, I would recommend maybe doing it on October 8th, which is our next board meeting, and we could either do it before or after the board meeting, unless you just want to do it on your own. It's up to you. What would you prefer? Do you want to do it as a group, or do you want to do it?
It'd be nice to do it as a group.
Okay.
That's before the board meeting. After I'm tired.
Okay. And will that work for you?
It's not a grant day, so I can.
Okay. All right. So we'll have to see how long it is. I'm guessing for some reason that it's only going to be an hour. Maybe it'll be longer. I don't know. So we'll see, and then we'll go from there. So, all right. Thank you. Agenda item 12 is an executive session for the purpose of real estate because it is in the best interest of the public to discuss this matter in closed session. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Gordermaker. Yep. Is there a second? Second. Second, Dr. Brose. Please vote. And then you want to switch his? All right, thank you. So, and if you didn't see the message from Mrs. Simmons, if you did order supper, it's in the Challenge Center. You can get that and then bring it back to the Nil building, or the Nil room, sorry. Are we all back? So I would need a motion to reconvene from executive session. So I heard Dr. Bros first, second, Mr. Brown. Please vote. Yep. Right, there is no approval of any action deemed necessary. Notification of upcoming board meetings.